The Great Hall of Harmony Prime was the largest room Admiral Park Do-hyun had ever seen. It stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Lights floated in the air without wires or supports. The walls were made of something that looked like glass but felt alive when he walked past them. 12 species had built this station together. 12 species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. And now, for the first time in history, humanity was asking to join them. Park stood at a small podium in the center of the room. His uniform was perfect. Every medal was in place. Every button was polished. He had practiced this moment for months. Behind him stood Dr. Yoon Ji-won, the woman who had spent her entire life studying alien cultures. She believed this day would change everything for humanity. She was right, but not in the way she hoped. The council members sat in a half circle around the podium. Each one was different from the others in ways that still made Park uncomfortable. The Valorians were tall beings made of living crystal. When they moved, they made sounds like wind chimes. The Keth were insects the size of cars, with too many legs and eyes that never blinked. The Morvani had no solid form at all. They were like water given thought, flowing in tanks that hovered above the floor. The high speaker of the council was a Valorian named Preth. His crystal body was old and clouded with age, but his voice carried across the great hall like thunder. The species known as humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Council, Preth announced. They have achieved faster than light travel. They have established colonies on 7 worlds. They meet the basic requirements. Park felt hope rise in his chest. Basic requirements. That was good. That meant they had a chance. However, Preth continued, the council has concerns. A hologram appeared in the air above Park's head. It showed Earth's proudest warship, the UENS Victory. Park had served on that ship for 10 years. He knew every deck, every system, every weakness. The alien delegates looked at it like children looking at a broken toy. Your vessels, Preth said, are powered by nuclear reactions. Controlled explosions, essentially. Your weapons use electromagnetic acceleration to throw metal at your enemies. He paused. Metal. Throw metal. Laughter filled the hall. At least, Park thought it was laughter. The Valorians made their chiming sound. The Keth clicked their mouthparts together. The Morvani bubbled and splashed in their tanks. Park's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He forced himself to stay calm. Your soldiers, said a serpent-like being named Vasek, require 8 hours of unconsciousness every day to function. They must consume organic matter 3 times daily. They feel pain. They experience fear. Vasek's long tongue flicked out as he spoke. These are not soldiers. These are prey animals playing at war. Dr. Yoon stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but Park could see her hand shaking slightly as she held her datapad. With respect, Delegate Vasek, humanity's survival is proof of our capability. We have endured ice ages that covered our entire planet. We have survived diseases that killed hundreds of millions of us. We invented weapons that could destroy our world, and we chose not to use them. That takes strength. Strength? Vasek slithered closer to the podium. He was 3 meters tall, and his scales reflected the floating lights like dark mirrors. You speak of strength while wearing skin that tears, carrying bones that break, pumping blood that spills so easily. The delegate makes an important point, said another council member. This one was Keth, a massive insect whose voice came from a translator box hung around what might have been its neck. When the Drakari swarm last emerged from dark space, 4 species were erased from existence. Gone completely. No survivors. No records. Nothing but empty worlds and bones. The hall went quiet at the mention of the Drakari. Even Park knew that name. Every species in the galaxy knew it. The Drekari were monsters. Billions of ships that ate everything in their path. They came from somewhere beyond known space, and when they came, civilizations ended. What would humanity do against such a threat? The Keth asked. Would you throw your metal at them? Would you explode your nuclear fires in their direction? The Drekari have consumed species far greater than yours. Park wanted to answer. He wanted to tell them that humanity had faced extinction before and won. He wanted to say that humans were more dangerous than they looked. But the words stuck in his throat because part of him wondered if the aliens were right. The council voted without leaving their seats. Small lights appeared above each delegate. Red for rejection. Green for acceptance. 12 red lights glowed in the darkness of the Great Hall. Humanity is denied full membership, Preth announced. You are assigned the status of observation species. This means you will be monitored, protected, when possible. You may trade with council species, but may not participate in military operations or political decisions. Protected. The word burned in Park's mind. Like they were children. Like they were pets. Dr. Yoon tried one more time. High speaker, please. Give us a chance to prove ourselves. Assign us a trial, a test, anything. Preth's crystal form shifted in a way that might have been a shrug. There is nothing to prove, Dr. Yoon. Humanity is what it is. Young, weak, limited by biology. Perhaps in another 10,000 years, you will have evolved enough to contribute. Until then, return to your worlds. Grow your food. Tell your stories. Leave the galaxy's protection to those built for such things. The delegates began to leave. As Vasek passed the human podium, he paused. His serpent eyes locked onto Admiral Park. Do not feel shame, human, Vasek said. His voice was soft, almost kind, which made it worse. Evolution made a mistake with your world. It happens. Not every species can be great. Park said nothing. He just watched the alien slither away. But inside his chest, something was changing. The hope was dying. And in its place, something cold and patient and very, very dangerous was beginning to wake up. He would remember this day. He would remember every laugh, every insult, every red light glowing in the dark. And someday, he promised himself, they would remember it too. 6 months passed like a slow wound healing wrong. Captain Kang Subin sat in her command chair aboard the UEN's Indomitable, reading reports that made her stomach turn. The Drekari swarm had emerged. 300 billion ships. 300 billion. The number was so large, it stopped meaning anything. She was a woman of 40 with gray streaks in her black hair. She had joined the Navy at 18 because she wanted to see the stars. Now she was seeing them, and they were full of monsters. Her bridge crew worked quietly around her. Chief Engineer Cho Tai-woo stood at his station, his thick fingers dancing over controls that managed the ship's reactor. He was a big man with oil stains on his hands that never quite washed off. Weapons Officer Nari sat at the tactical console, her face calm as always, her mind calculating firing solutions even when there was nothing to shoot. Captain, said the communications officer. Priority message from Earth Command. Alpha level encryption. Sabin's heart beat faster. Alpha level meant secrets. Alpha level meant something big. Send it to my personal screen. The message appeared on the small display built into her chair's armrest. As she read it, her hands began to shake. All captains, priority Alpha. The Drekari swarm has been confirmed. The Galactic Council is mobilizing all available forces. Human vessels are ordered to evacuate colonial space and retreat to Sol System. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. You will only be in the way. Subin read the last line 3 times. In the way. After everything humanity had built, after all the work they had done, the Council still saw them as useless. But there was more to the message. A second part, hidden behind another layer of encryption. Earth Command has authorized the activation of Doctrine 7. Authorization code follows. May God have mercy on us all. Sabin's blood went cold. She knew about Doctrine 7. Every captain knew. It was the nightmare hiding in the closet. The monster under the bed. The thing humanity had built and prayed they would never have to use. "Taiwu," she said. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. "Come to my ready room. Nari, you too. The rest of you maintain current heading." In the small private room behind the bridge, Subin locked the door and showed them the message. Taiwu read it twice. Then he sat down heavily in a chair. "They're really doing it. What is Doctrine 7? Nari asked. She was younger than the others, only 30. She had not been told everything. Subin explained. When humans first met the aliens, they realized how far behind they were. Human technology was thousands of years less advanced. Human bodies were weaker, slower, more fragile. So humanity did what it always did. It adapted. They built better ships, better weapons, better soldiers, but they also built limits. Our reactors can produce 5 times more power than we use, Subin said. We cap them at 40% because higher outputs cause radiation that kills the crew within days. Our weapons can fire 3 times faster, but we limit them to prevent overheating that could destroy the ship. Our soldiers could be enhanced with drugs that remove fear, eliminate pain, and keep them awake for days. But we ban those drugs because the side effects are terrible. We made ourselves weak on purpose? Nari asked. We made ourselves safe, Taiwu corrected. We made ourselves civilized. The limits exist because without them, we would destroy ourselves just as fast as we destroy our enemies. Subin nodded. Doctrine 7 removes the limits. All of them. Every safety protocol. Every restriction. It turns our ships into burning stars, and our soldiers into something that barely counts as human anymore. And Earth Command has authorized this? The Drakari are coming, Subin said simply. 300 billion ships. The Council's fleet is 2 million vessels. Do the math. The math was simple. The Council was going to lose. And when they lost, the Drakari would keep coming. They would eat world after world until they reached Earth. And then humanity would end, not with a bang, but with silence. Unless someone did something impossible, Taiwu stood up. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. I'll start the process. It will take about 4 hours to remove all the reactor governors. The hull might not survive the heat, but we should get at least one good fight out of her. What about the crew? Nari asked. Subin thought about the 300 men and women serving on her ship. They had families, dreams, lives waiting for them back on Earth. They volunteered, she said. They knew the risks when they joined, and they would rather die fighting than running. The next 4 hours were the longest of Sabin's life out in the engine room. Taiwu and his team disabled safety system after safety system. The reactor's hum grew louder, deeper, angrier. The temperature in the ship began to rise in the medical bay. Soldiers lined up for injections. The drugs were called Prometheus Mix. They would flood the body with chemicals that enhanced everything: strength, speed, reflexes, awareness, for 72 hours. A human soldier would become something beyond human, but the cost was terrible. After the 72 hours ended, most soldiers would suffer complete physical collapse. Their hearts would give out. Their brains would swell. Those who survived would face months of recovery and might never be the same again. Private Beat Jue was one of the first in line. She was 22 years old. Her hair was cut short and practical. Her eyes were steady as the medic prepared the needle. "Are you sure?" the medic asked. He was an older man who had seen too much. "Once this is in your system, there's no going back." GA thought about her mother back on Earth, her little brother who wanted to be a pilot someday, the small apartment where she had grown up, with the window that looked out at the stars. "I'm sure," she said. The needle went in. The drugs entered her blood, and something inside her began to change. Within an hour, she could hear conversations happening 3 decks away. Her heart beat slower and stronger. When she made a fist, she felt like she could punch through steel. She also felt the fear draining away like water down a sink. It just left. Everything left. She could still think. She could still remember who she was. But the emotions that usually clouded her thoughts were gone. She looked at her hands. They were steady. Perfectly steady. "How do you feel?" the medic asked. GA considered the question carefully. "Ready," she said. "I feel ready." Across the ship, the same scene played out again and again. 300 soldiers becoming something more than human and something less at the same time. On the bridge, Captain Subin watched her displays as the Indomitable transformed around her. The ship was no longer a vessel of the United Earth Navy. It was a weapon. A bomb waiting to explode in the enemy's face. "Course laid in," Nari reported. "We're approaching the Council's fallback coordinates. 46 other human ships have confirmed Doctrine 7 activation. We're not alone. 47 ships. That was all humanity could gather in time. 47 ships against billions. Subin thought about the council members who had laughed at humanity. She thought about Preth with his crystal body and his cold words. She thought about Vasek calling humans prey animals. "Good," she said. "Set course for the Vareth Nebula. Maximum speed." The Indomitable leaped forward into the dark, trailing fire behind it like a comet made of rage. The Vareth Nebula was a cloud of gas and dust that stretched across 100 light years. It was beautiful in pictures. In person, it was the graveyard of empires. The Galactic Council's fleet had gathered there to make their stand. 2 million ships from 11 species, arranged in perfect formations that had won 1,000 battles across 10,000 years. Their shields glowed with energy. Their weapons hummed with power. They represented the greatest military force in the known galaxy. They were not enough. The Drakari came like a wave of darkness. Their ships were not made of metal. They were alive, grown from organic materials that healed when damaged and bred when destroyed. Each Drakari vessel was a hive containing millions of warriors that felt no fear, knew no mercy, and wanted only one thing: to feed. From his position on the command ship, High Speaker Preth watched the swarm approach. His crystal body flickered with colors that meant worry. "All vessels open fire," he commanded. 2 million ships unleashed their weapons at once. The nebula lit up like a sun being born. Thousands of Drakari ships exploded. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. But still they came. For every ship destroyed, 3 more pushed forward. They were not just a fleet. They were a force of nature. A hunger given form. And they smelled prey. Delegate Vasek commanded a section of the Serpent People's fleet from his cruiser. He watched his ships die one by one as Drakari swarms latched onto their hulls and burned through with acidic saliva. "Retreat," he ordered. "All Serpent vessels, fall back to the secondary line." But there was no secondary line. The Drakari had already surrounded them. On the Council command ship, Preth received reports that grew worse by the minute. 60% of the fleet destroyed. 70%. 80%. Where are the reinforcements? He demanded. "No reinforcements are coming, High Speaker. We gathered everything we had." Preth's crystal form dimmed. He had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen civilizations rise and fall, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that he was about to watch another one end. Then his communications officer made a sound of surprise. "Hi, speaker. We are detecting new contacts. Coming through the Zeroth corridor. Impossible. That corridor is unstable. No ship could survive passage through it. 47 contacts confirmed, High Speaker. They are human vessels." Preth would have laughed if he had not been so tired. Humans, the weak ones, the prey animals who needed sleep and food. What could 47 human ships possibly do against billions of Drekari? Captain Kang Sabin's voice came through the communication system. It was calm. Too calm for someone flying into the jaws of death. "Council vessels, this is Captain Kam Subin of the United Earth Navy. You will halt your retreat and return to formation. We are not finished here." Vasik's response was immediate. "Captain, you are insane. This battle is lost. Even our combined forces cannot stop the swarm. Take your tiny fleet and run while you still can." "No," Subin replied. "We did not come here to run." "Then what did you come here to do? Die? There is no honor in pointless sacrifice." Sabin's voice changed. It became something colder, something that made even the ancient Preth feel a chill in his crystal core. "We came to show you how we fight when we stop pretending to be civilized." The human ships accelerated. They moved faster than any ship the Council had ever seen. Their hulls glowed red with heat from overdriven reactors. They flew in formations that should have been impossible, making turns that would have killed any normal crew. But these were not normal crews. Inside the Indomitable, the temperature was over 40 degrees. Radiation levels were 3 times what should have been fatal. The crew did not care. They could not care anymore. The Prometheus mix had taken that ability away. Private Beak GA stood in the boarding pod bay with 11 other soldiers. Their armor was scratched and dented from 3 previous battles. Their weapons were loaded with ammunition designed to cut through Drakari organic matter. "Target is the central hive carrier," their sergeant said. His name was Quan Dayan, and he had been awake for 61 hours. His eyes never blinked anymore. "Mission is to kill the command organism. This will disrupt swarm coordination in this sector." "And extraction?" GA asked. Quan looked at her. His face showed nothing. "There is no extraction. We kill the target or we die trying. Those are the only options." GA nodded. She should have felt fear. She should have felt sadness. Instead, she felt nothing but a cold focus that filled her mind like water filling a glass. "Understood, Sergeant." The boarding pod launched. What happened next would become legend. The 12 human soldiers landed inside a Drakari hive carrier that contained over 2 million warriors. They should have died in the first minute. They did not. Jihee's rifle fired until the barrel melted. Then she picked up a Drakari limb and used it as a club. When that broke, she used her bare hands. The drugs in her system gave her strength that no human should have. She punched through armored plates. She ripped limbs from bodies. She kept moving forward, even when her own blood ran down her face from a wound she could not feel. One by one, her squad members fell. Quan died killing a Drakari queen that would have spawned 1,000 more warriors. A soldier named Moon Yejin died holding a corridor so the others could advance. Each death bought meters. Each meter brought them closer. In the end, only GA remained. She found the command organism in the heart of the ship. It was a mass of flesh and nerve tissue larger than a house, connected to the entire swarm through biological signals. GA was bleeding from 20 wounds. Her left arm was broken in 3 places. One of her eyes was swollen shut. She had been fighting for over an hour without rest. She raised the explosive charge she had carried through the entire nightmare and smiled. "You should have stayed in dark space," she whispered. The explosion could be seen from 100 kilometers away. Outside, the effect was immediate. The Drekari swarm in that sector stopped moving. Ships drifted. Warriors went silent. The coordination that made them so deadly was gone. The human vessels pressed their advantage. The Indomitable's main cannon fired continuously for 11 minutes, destroying hive carriers one after another. When the cannon finally overheated and melted, Captain Subin ordered the weapon housings ejected directly into the nearest enemy ship in the engine room. Chief Engineer Cho Tai-woo fought to keep the reactor stable. The containment field was failing. Radiation was cooking him alive. His skin was blistering. His vision was turning black at the edges. He did not leave his post. 47 more minutes, he said to himself. Just give me 47 more minutes. He held the reactor together with manual overrides and pure stubbornness. When his hands stopped working, he used his elbows. When his legs gave out, he wedged himself against the console. He gave the Indomitable 47 more minutes of life. 47 minutes in which it destroyed 89 more enemy ships. Then the reactor finally failed, and Cho Tai-woo died standing at his post by the end of the battle. 31 human ships had been destroyed. 16,000 human lives had been lost, but the Drekari swarm had lost something it had never lost before. Its momentum, its confidence, its belief that it could not be stopped. The swarm did something that had never been recorded in galactic history. It retreated. The survivors of the Council fleet watched the Drekari pull back into dark space. They watched the human ships that remained, burning and broken but still flying, and they understood that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. On the deck of the ruined hive carrier, Beak Jie walked out of the flames. Her armor was destroyed. Her weapons were gone. She was injured so badly that she should not have been able to stand, but she was alive. And she was looking for more enemies to kill. When the rescue shuttle found her, she was sitting in a pile of dead Drekari, cleaning her knife on her torn uniform. "Is there another target?" she asked the rescue team. They did not know how to answer. The medical station Solace floated in orbit above a quiet moon, far from the destruction of the Varith Nebula. Its white halls had been designed for healing. Its rooms had been filled with soft light and gentle music. Now, those halls were full of screams. Admiral Park Do-yoon walked through the human recovery ward with a face made of stone. He had not slept in 4 days. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the battle. He saw the ships burning. He saw the names scrolling across his screen. 16,000 names. 16,000 humans who would never go home. The survivors were worse than the dead in one room. A pilot sat in bed staring at nothing. His hands would not stop shaking. The Prometheus mix was leaving his system, and his body was paying the price. He'd been the best pilot in his squadron. Now he could not hold a cup without spilling in another room. 3 engineers lay in medically induced comas. Their radiation exposure had been so severe that their bodies were breaking down at the cellular level. The doctors said 2 of them might survive. The 3rd would be dead by morning. And then there was Lieutenant Beak Jie. Park stopped outside her room. Through the window, he could see her sitting upright in bed, bandages covering most of her body. Her eyes were open. They moved, tracking something that was not there. Her lips moved silently, repeating words he could not hear. "How is she?" Park asked the doctor standing nearby. The doctor was a young man named Shin Dong-yuk. He looked older than he should. The last week had aged everyone on this station. "Physically, she will recover," Dong-yuk said. 23 wounds. Broken arm. Broken ribs. Internal bleeding. We have fixed what we can fix. But Admiral, he hesitated. Tell me, the psychological effects of the Prometheus mix are worse than we expected. She was under its influence for over 70 hours. Her brain chemistry has been fundamentally altered. The parts of her mind that process emotion, that connect her to other people, that let her feel normal human feelings. He shook his head. They are damaged. Perhaps permanently. Park looked at the young woman who had killed 6,000 enemy warriors single-handedly, who had walked out of a burning ship covered in blood that was mostly not her own, who had asked for another target because she did not know how to stop fighting. Will she recover? He asked. We do not know. We have never seen anything like this before. None of us have. This is the first time humanity has used these protocols in actual combat. Don Huke's voice cracked slightly. Admiral, what did we do to these people? Park did not answer. He could not. The surviving council delegates arrived later that day. They came to observe, to understand, to see what humanity had become. Delegate Vasek moved through the hospital with his serpent body low to the ground. A posture of submission, Park realized. Of fear. The being who had called humans prey animals was now afraid of them. Your soldiers, Vasek said, as they passed a room where a woman was undergoing surgery. They do not behave as wounded beings should. I saw one of them refuse pain medication because he said it made him slow. Another tried to leave her bed to return to combat. Her legs are broken. The drugs we gave them suppressed their survival instincts, Park explained. Fear of pain. Fear of death. Fear of injury. All of it was removed so they could fight without hesitation. But the drugs have left their bodies now. Why do they still act this way? Because you cannot remove part of a mind and expect it to come back unchanged. They broke themselves to win this battle. Some of them will heal, others. Park trailed off. They continued walking until they reached a viewing gallery that looked out at the stars. The nebula was still visible in the distance, glowing with the light of burning ships. Why? Vasek asked suddenly. You knew the cost. You knew your soldiers would suffer. You knew many would die. Why did you come? Park thought about the question for a long time. Because you were going to lose, he finally said. And when the council fell, the Drekari would have kept coming. They would have eaten world after world until they reached Earth. We did not fight for the council, delegate. We fought for our home. But your technology is so primitive. Your bodies are so fragile. How did you possibly win? Captain Kang Subin appeared at the end of the gallery. She was walking despite what the doctors had told her. Her left arm was wrapped in a regeneration sleeve. A patch covered her right eye where neural damage had blinded her. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone carrying a weight no one else could see. We won, she said, because we understand something your species never had to learn. Vasek turned to face her. And what is that? Survival. Subin came closer, her one remaining eye fixed on the alien. Your people evolved on a paradise world. No predators. No ice ages. No diseases. The Valorians grew from crystal gardens where food was unlimited. The Keth were designed by ancient builders to be perfect. She stopped directly in front of Vasek, looking up at the towering serpent. Humanity crawled out of mud. We competed with animals that could kill us with one bite. We lived through winters that froze half our population. We ate each other when we had nothing else. We built religions because the universe was too terrifying to face without believing something cared about us. And then we threw away those religions when they held us back. You are saying your weakness made you strong? I am saying we were never weak. Sabin's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. We simply chose to act weak. We built laws and ethics and safety protocols because we knew what we were capable of without them. What you saw at Vareth was not us becoming monsters. It was us taking off the mask we wear to be civilized. Vasek was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been forming in every alien mind since the battle ended. And now? Will the mask go back on? Admiral Park stepped forward. It is already happening. Doctrine 7 has been deactivated across all human forces. Our reactors are being limited again. The combat drugs are being collected and destroyed. In 6 months, we will be back to normal operations. Normal operations, Vasek repeated. Flying slow ships. Carrying weak weapons. Sending soldiers who need sleep and food. Yes, but if the Drekari return, Park looked at the delegate with an expression that contained no comfort whatsoever. His eyes were tired and sad and absolutely certain. Then we will take the mask off again, he said. And you should pray we remember to put it back on when we are finished. That night, Jihei finally slept. Her dreams were full of fire and blood and the screaming of things that should not exist. But somewhere in the darkness, she also dreamed of her mother's face, her brother's laugh, the stars outside her childhood window dot. When she woke up, for just a moment, she felt something. A flicker of warmth in the cold machine. Her mind had become. She held on to that feeling as tightly as she could dot. It was the first step on a very long road home. 1 year passed. The Great Hall of Harmony Prime looked the same as it had the first time humans stood in it. The same floating lights. The same walls that felt alive. The same half-circle of alien delegates watching from their seats. But everything had changed. Dr. Yoon Ji-won stood at the podium where Admiral Park had stood a year and a half ago. Her hair had more gray in it now. Her eyes had seen things that could not be unseen. But her voice was steady as she spoke. The United Earth government formally requests full membership in the Galactic Council, she said. Not as warriors, not as protectors, but as partners. We have much to learn from your cultures and your sciences. We hope you have something to learn from us as well. The new High Speaker of the Valorians was named Thren. He was younger than Preth had been, his crystal body still clear and bright. Preth had died at Vareth, consumed by Drakari borders while screaming across open channels. Thren leaned forward. Dr. Yoon, the Council has spent the past year discussing humanity's display at the Battle of Vareth Nebula. There is much admiration for your courage, but there is also fear. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What assurance can you give us that humanity will not turn its true nature against the Council itself? You have shown us what you become when your limits are removed. How do we know you will not remove them again? How do we know you will not decide that we are your enemies? Dr. Yoon turned to look at Admiral Park Do-hyum, who stood with the rest of the human delegation near the back of the hall. He nodded slightly, and she stepped aside. The Admiral walked to the podium. He was wearing the same uniform he had worn the first time, but it fit differently now. He moved like a man who had buried too many friends. You have no assurance, he said simply. None at all. The hall went silent. Some of the delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Keth clicked their mouthparts together. The Morvani bubbled in their tanks. You have no assurance, Park repeated. Just as we have no assurance that the Morvani will not decide to absorb our oceans. Just as we have no assurance that the Keth will not determine we are useful as food. Every species in this room has the power to harm every other species. That is the nature of existence among the stars. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of each delegate in turn. Trust is not built on assurances. Trust is built on choices. Every day, every hour, every minute, each of us chooses to be better than our worst instincts. Humanity made that choice long before we reached the stars. We built laws to protect the weak. We created art to celebrate beauty. We developed medicine to heal the sick, even when letting them die would have been easier. His voice softened slightly. Yes, we have a monster inside us. Every human carries it. We feel its hunger when we are threatened. We hear its voice when we are afraid. But we also have something else. We have the ability to look at that monster and say no. To put the mask back on. To choose civilization over savagery. Lieutenant Big GA stood near the back of the human delegation. She had spent 8 months in rehabilitation, learning to feel things again. The process had been slow and painful. Some days, she wondered if she would ever be fully human again, but she was trying. That was what mattered. She was trying. An elderly Valorian delegate was struggling to navigate the unfamiliar gravity of the station. Without thinking, GA stepped forward and offered her arm for support. The crystal being looked at her with surprise, then gratitude. Thank you, young one, the Valorian said. The gravity here is difficult for old bones. I understand, GA replied. My grandfather had trouble with stairs. I used to help him every day. It was such a small thing. Such a human thing. But Dr. Yoon saw it happen, and she smiled. The council voted. This time, there were no red lights. 12 green lights glowed in the darkness of the Great Hall. Humanity was granted full membership, along with a designation that had never existed before in galactic records. Species of concern. Valued ally, both at once. Both forever. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Delegate Vasek approached Dr. Yoon in the corridor. The serpent moved differently now. Less proud. More thoughtful. A question, he said. During the battle, your Captain Kang spoke of masks. She said that what we saw at Vareth was humanity taking off its mask. But I must know the truth. Which face is real? The civilized humans who build hospitals and write poetry? Or the ones who fought at Vareth? Yoon thought about the question for a long time. She thought about GA helping the elderly Valorian. She thought about Cho Tai-woo dying to keep his ship alive for 47 more minutes. She thought about all the humans who had chosen to sacrifice themselves for strangers they would never meet. Both, she finally said. Both faces are real. That is what makes us dangerous, Delegate. We are not monsters pretending to be civilized. We are not civilized beings with a monster inside. We are both, at every moment, in every breath. And we choose which face to show. Vasek considered this. And if you choose wrong? Dr. Yoon's smile faded. Her eyes became something cold and distant and very old. Then I suggest you start running, she said. Because we will not stop. The years passed. Humanity became everything they had promised to be. They contributed hospitals to worlds that had never known medicine. They built universities where species that had been enemies for centuries learned to work together. They created art that made beings with no tear ducts somehow weep, but deep in the vaults of Earth Command, Doctrine 7 remained on file. The safety protocols were stored on secure servers. The formula for Prometheus Mix was locked away but not destroyed. Every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of Vareth Nebula, Admiral Park Do-yeon traveled to Luna. There was a memorial there, carved from black stone that had come from a distant star. The names of 16,000 humans were written on its surface. 16,000 men and women who had taken off the mask and never put it back on. Park stood before the stone in silence, reading the names he knew by heart. Cho Tai-woo, Kwon Daein, Yun Myra, Moon Yejin, hundreds more, thousands more. Rest well, he whispered every year. The mask is on. The protocols are active. We are being civilized again. You can sleep now. Big GA came with him sometimes. She had married a man who worked in a flower shop. She had 2 children who thought her war stories were made up. She laughed now, though it had taken years to learn how again. She cried at sad movies. She hugged her husband every night like he might disappear. The monster was still inside her. It would always be there. But she had built a cage for it, brick by brick, day by day. She had chosen who she wanted to be. That was enough. That had to be enough. Far beyond the edge of known space, the Drakari swarm drifted through the void. They had regrown their numbers. Billions had become trillions. New hive carriers had spawned. New warriors had hatched. They remembered the species that had burned them at Vareth. The small ones. The weak ones. The ones who should have been prey. They remembered how those small, weak beings had torn through their swarm like fire through dry grass. How they had destroyed hive carriers that had never known defeat. How they had kept fighting when any reasonable species would have fled. The Drakari were hungry. They were always hungry. Their nature demanded that they spread and consume and grow, but they were not stupid. They turned their swarm in a different direction. Away from the galaxy they had tried to devour. Away from the species that had taught them something new. Some prey was not worth the cost. Some cages were meant to stay closed, and some were in the dark. Behind masks of civilization and laws and gentle words, humanity watched the stars and waited. Ready to be kind. Ready to be cruel. Ready to choose which face to wear. The galaxy was safer. Now, not because the monsters were gone, but because the greatest monster of all had decided, for now, to be good.